the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself, because that will determine your quality of thinking and your level of thinking. So if you want to have better outcomes in your life, it all starts about how you think, and that leads back to the questions that you ask.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Go back to capital hacking. You just got tomahawked.
Yeah.
No, or Tony Hawker. I don't know. Chopped. You got chopped because my buddy John Edwin says, Josh, bring the heat on the beginning of every episode. John.
He does. He tomahawks his way in that says, welcome back. And man, that energy is contagious.
Wait till you see why, though. Today's MC Laubscher.
Yeah. Michal.
I think that's how you say his first name, but he's a good friend of the show. We learn a lot today. And MC is you guys know him. He's the
Cashflow Ninja.
The Cashflow Ninja, an absolute superstar in the world of alternative investing and education and teaching people how to break free from the matrix. There's a little matrix conversation in the show for those of you who love Keanu Reeves as much as we do. I think you're going to learn a lot because he's just going to share a perspective, and we're going to tell you about his original backstory. We don't get to talk about that much. What else do you think we should share with?
No, I love it. MC also, he gets into the 10 types of capital. He shares that with us. Then he starts getting into different predictions that he has at 2023, 2024, 2025, and where he sees the market going, different strategies he has on what you should be investing in. I mean, his podcast, the Cashflow Ninja, has featured some of the world's greatest minds, and it is one of the top podcasts. So you know you're going to get amazing information in the next 30 minutes.
I love it. And you know what? One last little thing about his expertise is he spent about half his life in another country and half his life in this country. And don't you agree with me, dear listeners, that people who get to see this country for the first time with fresh adult eyes tend to see it in its beauty, not just its faults? You know, we have faults, brother. We all have faults, the countries, the people, me, but there's so much good that can happen in this country. And that's what's, despite the fact that he's going to share with you some things that he thinks are challenges coming, he always says, but challenges mean there's opportunity. So I love this episode. I think you'll enjoy it. We look forward to hearing your feedback. Check us out and wait till you hear from MC Laubscher.
Enjoy.
Welcome to the big show, Mr. MC Laubscher.
We are so pumped for you today, aka the Cashflow Ninja.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, it's been a while. And for those of you who are paying attention, it was episode 1699 and 232 when Mr. MC graced the airwaves of capital hacking. John, it's your first time getting to see this unbridled beauty. Look at that. Look at that beard on that guy.
Yeah.
He is a beauty.
It's legit and it's filled in very well.
Okay. So I thought it would be fun, MC Laubscher, because not everybody knows this. They all know you as the Cashflow Ninja. You interview famous people, but you also teach. You're passionate. Some of the key things you talk about, we make sure all those things get hit. But let's go back a step so people understand. One of the parts I came to learn about you as you partnered with us and became a teammate on several projects. You're from another country. That's not just a Southern accent you got there, fella. And you always talk about, you're privileged to have been able to live in two different countries because you have perspective. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your backstory?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa. It's not a Pennsylvanian accent, although my wife is from Pennsylvania, from Philly. But I grew up in South Africa during a very interesting time in the country's history. So I was a young guy that lived through a time period where the country experienced massive changes. So you literally had the collapse of one regime, which was, everybody knows, the apartheid regime, to then another regime taking over at that stage, which is still the current government 30 years later. So we've had a one-party government for 30 years. And prior to that, we've had a one-party government. But when I was a young man living through all of this, I mean, it had a profound impact on who I am, how I see the world, how I think, because just think about it, right? So let's just say, and I think I was how old was I when this all went down? 11, 12? So everything that you've been told up until that stage in your life, turns out that everything was not as it was presented or you were told, right?
Yeah.
And then for a time period, it was like 2 or 3 years, nobody knew what was going on. So it was almost like, you have like an identity crisis because you're, wait a second, everything that I've been told was wrong, not true. That's what they're telling me now. And now nobody knows what the truth is. It's just chaos, basically. And at that stage, it was pretty turbulent too. I mean, most folks that followed it overseas could probably think back and look at, man, it was close to a civil war and people were stocking up and it was weapons and food and, all kinds of stuff going on in that country, which, I mean, we managed to avoid that, to that crazy period, to the new government taking control and charge. And then it was that your reality was presented another way and say, by the way, everything that you've learned up to now, not true. And at turbulent times, we don't really know, what to tell you about that. But here's how everything was supposed to be. And this is your new reality. So for me, I'm like, I stepped back and I started to realize that, wow, the world is a stage and we're all mere actors, as Shakespeare would say. Nothing is as presented. So I just started to do my own research, read on my own, try to ask questions, try to think critically, because the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself, because that will determine your quality of thinking and your level of thinking. So if you want to have better outcomes in your life, it all starts about how you think, and that leads back to the questions that you ask. So sometimes when you ask better questions that you don't have the answers to, that'll actually evolve or challenge you to think in a different way rather than having the answers to everything, which is, back to why the school system sucks. That's another episode for your listeners, because you just get told, hey, here's all the answers. And you should have all the answers, by the way. Nobody's got them. Nobody has all the answers. But yeah, it had a profound impact on me. I came to the United States. I was just blown away about the opportunity in this country. I looked at every single American as if they won a lottery ticket. I was very, very fortunate enough to travel quite a bit around the world. And
You got to tell everybody why, buddy. I mean, not only you were a stud professional rugby player, right? I mean, this is a time with the dawn of rugby in America, right? I mean, where were you playing at the time?
I traveled. Yeah, I had a rugby scholarship at university, traveled quite a bit in South Africa, and then I traveled by myself overseas quite a bit, and then I ended up in the United States, and I traveled, throughout the United States, played in a league here up until 2007, then also traveled internationally. So I was very blessed that I was able to do that. It gave me great perspective. Saw a large part of the world, and America and the United States. When one of the things that really, really drew me to this country is the incredible upside potential and upward mobility that people have. I don't think most Americans realize that, right? Especially now, they think everything is terrible and bad and they always complain about it. But over the past 20 years, I was like, man, there's incredible upside potential and upward mobility. You have so many rags to riches stories. There's so many incredible things done here. A lot of Americans are resilient people. They're very creative. So there's a lot of things that Americans are right at the top of the game. So that's one of the reasons why I was very excited to, build a life for me here, because I started to realize what was going on in South Africa. There was more opportunities over here. And, 22 years later, I came here in 2001. Here I am with several businesses having a blast and just, continue to have a blast.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I love hearing that story. And my father came over from Pakistan in his mid-20s, and he always bought made in America. He was always driving an American car. His clothes were all, he would look for it to support the country, and and frequently talked about being the country of opportunity, and he had never seen anything like it in the world. Can you take us to how did you come up with this name, the Cashflow Ninja? What does that mean? And all the great things that you're doing. Can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that about your dad too. I mean, the immigrant mentality is incredible. And yeah, I mean, that's why so many immigrants come from all over the world here, and they are able to do incredible things. There was actually an article on Forbes that somebody sent me because fellow South African Elon Musk was on that list, but it was a list about all the immigrants. It was of all of the successful immigrants that were in the United States. It was just, I'm not surprised. But the Cashflow Ninja, so my dad is actually a very well-known martial artist that traveled around the world. And one of the things that I learned from my dad, and I always say this, kids learn by watching parents. It's not what they tell you.
Right.
So I watched him, and one of the things that he does and continues to do, he's 74 years old, still crushing it. He's still a ninja. He pursues excellence in his craft daily. So he never arrives in excellence. He just gets up every day and he tries to get better. 74, can still do a clap push-up, works out, 2 to 3 hours a day, still teaches karate. He's very, very disciplined still because he tries to get better every single day, and that journey will never stop for him. So from a brand standpoint, I want to incorporate that because that's kind of my philosophy of how I approach business and investing. I just try to get better every day. I don't know everything that there is to know. You'll never be able to do that. I have so many blind spots. I still make so many mistakes, but I just try to be better every single day. And I kind of incorporate that from my sports background too. But cash flow was a thing that I was passionate about. I've been a real estate investor for, what is it now? 23 years.
Wow.
Started in 2001? What is it, 22 years? You can tell I'm really good at math. But so Cashflow Ninja was the brand that I built, and it's a podcast that I started in 2016. And just, I could never have dreamt that it turned into what it turned into. 180 countries, millions of downloads. I think we just crossed 5.5 million downloads globally. And the podcast is one thing, but we also do a lot of educational stuff. So I do books, newsletters now, full publishing company, and then also a mastermind. And Cashflow Ninja started with a goal of sharing cash flow investment strategies, of helping people escape the rat race and get to financial freedom. But in 2020, we did a little bit of a pivot. We're still on mission of helping people escape the rat race. But although people were free in 2020, they realized that there was another thing missing. They weren't sovereign. They might have been financially free, but all of a sudden, they were limited in what they can do, where they can move, and there were other dangers. So sovereignty became a big part of it too. And I started to realize that that's a massive piece that people would need in a turbulent world. So we started to focus on not just escaping the rat race and achieving financial freedom, but how you escape the matrix is essentially becoming sovereign, decentralizing yourself from falling systems. So we have a mastermind called Cashflow Nirvana, where business owners and investors that want to protect and build wealth during turbulent times can join. And that's some of the stuff that we focus on: sovereignty, freedom, and then legacy is the third piece where, people always talk about leaving a legacy. That's the easy part, get a good attorney and a CPA and you could figure it out. But how about living it? And living it is showing.
Wow.
Living your legacy by showing your children. So that's kind of what we're doing. So we changed the pivot a little bit, but having a lot of fun.
It's a lot. Drop the mic, right? You see what? This guy is just prolific.
So what pill do you take, the red or the blue?
Well, my mom would say, never take a pill from any strange person that offers it to you in a street corner, right? I think if I met Morpheus, I'm like, dude, I'm not taking any pill from strangers. I don't know you.
It's good. It's a good way to go. I think that model is pretty good.
Just to round out all that great experience, we're going to have you teach a little bit here. We have a little bit more time with you. We booked this time because I love chronicling all the different things you've taught us over the years. But we're going to talk about, I'd like for you to tease a few of your predictions for this year and next year, your 5 predictions, that maybe give the top 1 or 2. And we're also going to ask you to teach, what do you mean by the 10 types of capital? And the reason I find that interesting, that you have a whole training on capital, is because it was a speech you gave on a show in 2018 when we were creating this podcast that actually solidified the name that I was kicking around, Capital Act. And we were kicking it around because I thought, it portrayed where we want to go. We want to build out this ability to impact. And capital has the ability, has potency, has power. And then you gave a whole dissertation on a show, and I called you right away, and that's how this whole relationship began, by the way, was following him on shows. So why don't we ask you to take a deep breath? Would you like to tackle one or two of your key predictions? And then I do have a question later for another thing. But tell us about your predictions on the economy and on the society or whatever you want to go.
Yeah. So we are living during a process right now where we are in it already of a process of a reset. And there's terminologies gets thrown around. The World Economic Forum, the crowd there at Davos coined the phrase, the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab wrote a book called The Great Reset. COVID-19 and the Great Reset was one of his books. So he coined that phrase, and people would say, well, what's the Great Reset? The Great Reset essentially is that all the systems that the world operates on currently are in the process of resetting, collapsing, and changing. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you think about the systems that the world run on, the monetary system, that's going to change. It's already in the process of changing. You have think tanks all over the world. Every single central bank has already got a document that they've published. It's either called Bretton Woods 3, like the IMF, which Bretton Woods 2 was the petrodollar. Bretton Woods 1 was signed in New Hampshire, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in 1944, where the US dollar became the world reserve currency. So the monetary system is changing, the global monetary system. They've all got papers out about it. People can do their own research, look online.
Real quick, to just clarify, you mean they're going to move to a digital currency? Is that what you meant by changing?
That's part of it. So that's part of it.
You predicted that
central bank
years
digital
ago.
currencies. Yeah, central banks' digital currencies are now, it's on marketing. it's on marketing steam in the media. You hear it everywhere now. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's sharing it. And central bank digital currencies is part of this new monetary system. So what you're seeing is pieces of it is coming out, but you haven't seen the full picture yet. So the full picture is when you'll have a new balance of power. The US dollar is the world reserve currency right now. What would the new world reserve currency be? I don't know, but I can probably guess that everybody wants to have some sort of control in that, other powers that's there. So that's changing. Central bank digital currencies, which will be central bank digital currencies issued by a central bank in the country that you live in, sent directly to citizens. It's a new type of money. That's one thing that everybody's talking about. So that's one of the things that we see in that realm. The economy is changing. Real estate's changing. How is the economy changing? Well, has anybody seen anything what's going on in AI? That's just one thing. And I'll tell you how powerful AI is. We had a computer programmer play around with ChatGPT in our network, and he submitted this code to ChatGPT he knows it would take him about 10 hours to code. ChatGPT did it in 10 seconds.
Wow.
Not 10 minutes, 10 seconds. So that's one thing that's happening in the economy. So the economy is completely going to change. It's going to be more digital. There's a lot of things happening. Health systems, educational systems. Anybody notice what's going on with educational systems?
Yeah.
Do you need education if you've got AI taking over a lot of stuff? Would you need to learn figure AI out by yourself rather than sit in a classroom where they're not even talking about it? So education in the shape and form that it is basically obsolete. It's going to be more prevalent for a lot of folks that it's obsolete. Universities are going to be obsolete because of this. Anyway, so those are just some ideas of why a reset is happening. Why things are resetting. And, here's the thing. This is all economical, but it manifests itself in very different shapes and forms. So a lot of people don't see this coming. Just like the internet, by the way. How many businesses got wiped out by the internet because they weren't flexible enough and adapt? But how many millionaires and billionaires were made because of the internet, right? So there's two sides of this. So what I'm sharing with folks is that do not let this stuff scare you. Don't be afraid of this stuff. Just recognize that it's coming and then figure out how you can position yourself to be on the right side of this and don't get caught off guard. Because this is what's going to happen. We've seen a wealth transfer since 2020, and the speed at which it's been happening is crazy. Can you imagine the wealth transfer and the speed at which is going to happen when you have AI, robotics, 3D printing, and so forth?
I'll tell you what, MC, you say that, and it's ominous. We actually had a gentleman on the show, Bill Brown.
Will Brown.
Will Brown. And he talked about it, and he made a great analogy. He goes, he's in AI. He has a software service called Magic Form AI. And he was saying,
Yep.
think about, he feels like he's in the 1999, 2000 era of the internet. He says, I feel like I was in this era of the AI transformation. So we don't think it's at his point, it's not even really begun yet. And it hasn't barely even begun. And yet it already shook the confidence of Google, didn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't there news like Google is being called flat-footed? They missed the opening of OpenAI. Anyway, there is a lot in what you just said. And I think the salient thing for the listeners is you've put out some content about harnessing and being the winning side of that wave.
Yeah.
What did you call that content again, and how do they find it?
So a lot of people ask me, MC, what can you do? Like the reset's happening. So this is how it relates to capital and investors is when you have a reset, and I've been studying a lot of this over the past 6 months, reading a ton of books on past resets. There's been a number of resets already, as I mentioned, in the United States, but you have, we could go back to, 1913, 1944, 1971, 1974. So prices reset itself, asset prices reset itself to the new system. So one of the solutions that we've come up with is, of course, knowing what wealth is. And wealth, in my opinion, consists out of capital.
Wow.
And knowing what types of capital you should be focusing on and accumulate, because capital is a store of value, right?
Sure.
So what types of capital do you accumulate that's going to go up in value in an environment that's turbulent and that is resetting so that what you have is valuable and it's going to be repriced in whatever system is being rolled out in the coming years.
I love it. And I'm feeling like you and I and whoever would like to join us needs to be on a webinar, and we'll do a deeper dive maybe with one of your presentations, and we'll get a taste of your educational programs, because you've really only scratched the surface here. So this is really more of a tidbit teaser, correct?
Yeah. And
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
what are you currently investing in? That's what I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, so I'll share the 10 types of capital. That is
Great.
very, very important and to invest in. So I've listed them here. So the 10 types of capital first is spiritual capital, your connection to the creator. The second type of capital is human capital, your skill sets, your capabilities, and your talents. And under human capital, I also include being in the best shape mentally and physically too, because you are in the best shape spiritually if you focus on that first type of capital, spiritual capital. The third type of capital is intellectual capital, your knowledge, your experience, and your wisdom. The fourth type of capital is relationship capital, your family, friends, and your network. Your fifth type of capital is social capital, trust that you have with family, friends, and your network. It's huge. It can very easily be broken, and it takes a long time to build up, right? The same cultural capital is very, very big, especially in changing times. You want to be part of groups, tribes where there's shared values. So cultural capital is having shared values with folks, the same worldview and belief systems inside of your tribe. Then the seventh type of capital is political capital, influence that you have with your family, friends, and your network. Again, takes you a long time to build that up and have it become really valuable, and it can be taken away very, very quickly. The eighth type of capital is natural biological capital, and that's water, food, livestock, and so forth. And then the ninth type is build capital, physical things that are valuable, real estate that people need, right? And resorts and so forth. And then the 10th type actually is financial capital, real estate businesses, commodities, and paper assets. If you focus on the first 7, you automatically will get more of the last 3. The first 7 is focusing on living equity, life equity, as Catherine Austin Fitts call it. And the final 3 is part of financial equity. So I think when you focus on those, types of capital, which I see as wealth, because if you accumulate more of it, it just becomes more and more and more valuable. And it gives you a much more well-rounded scorecard than just, a bank balance and, a ton of properties, right?
I love it.
Wow. That was fantastic.
And, there's other things that are available on cashflowninja.com. And you can see, I really feel like this is the, it's almost like sometimes on these shows we tease, we got to invite you to do a proper web. Like your shows, sometimes you'll do these webinar breakouts with partners. We need to do a webinar breakout with you on the fourth industrial revolution, which we haven't even talked about here today, the types of capital and how to invest in them, and more of your predictions and how to capitalize them.
And by the way, the 10 types of capital. Here's what I heard. Number 1, invest in yourself. Number 2, invest in yourself. Number 3, invest in yourself. I heard that on every single one. So guys, don't look for something that you want to go outside of yourself to invest in. Start investing in yourself if you haven't already, because that's going to build the capital.
Amen. All right, go for it.
Yeah. And I will say too, a lot of, in years, I don't like to call it predictions because they're for fortune tellers, but a forecast of one of the most important assets in the next 10 years is going to be communities and your networks. And I just want to commend you on the job that you're doing with the community, community of capital hacking, the accountable equity community. That's going to be one of the most valuable assets. I think it's going to be much more valuable than Bitcoin was over the past 10 years. And that had quite a run. The communities is going to be huge. So yeah, absolutely. You guys are right. Invest in yourself, invest in your network and your community.
MC, we cannot wait to follow up with you. And I'm so glad our listeners love what you're doing. And I'm sure they've already checked you out. Thank you, MC.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, buddy.
Damn straight. We just got we got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.